Welcome back, everybody, to the Fantasy Birds. We are kicking off the 2024 fantasy football season with some Dynasty. Today, I'm going to be going over 5 wide receivers I love buying in Dynasty right now, grabbing them while we can get a little bit of a discount on them and projecting them to be profitable for our Dynasty teams for years to come. But let's not waste your time. Let's hop right into 5 wide receivers I want to be buying right now in Dynasty Fantasy Football. The first guy I am looking into trading for is Jaylen Waddle for the Miami Dolphins. While Waddle is coming off the worst statistical year of his NFL career, very short sample size, 3 years, but Waddle was a borderline top 12 wide receiver in his first 2 seasons. Last year finished as the number 21 wide receiver, so a disappointing campaign for Waddle for where you were taking him in drafts. And I could see some people getting a little uneasy with his production, especially when the Miami Dolphins go out and sign Odell Beckham Jr. to put alongside Tyreek Hill. However, I am not worried about OBJ at all. He's going to be 32 years old at the end of the season. Tyreek Hill, quietly 30 years old himself, so he's going to be 31 at the end of the year. You're looking at the two prime pass catchers alongside Waddle, both going to be on the wrong side of 30. We know wide receivers do have a longer shelf life than running backs in the NFL, but at age 30, we do start to see a dip in that production. While I do expect Tyreek Hill to be a great player this upcoming season, we don't know how long that's going to be sustainable, especially for a guy who relies so heavily on his speed. For Waddle, coming off another top 24 producing year, even though it was disappointing, he does get a 3-year, $84 million extension from the Miami Dolphins to keep him attached to Tua Tagovailoa in Miami for the foreseeable future. I think there is a reason Waddle's numbers did decrease this year. We did see him hampered by injuries early in the season, and that did linger throughout the entire year. Maybe that's something to blame for his numbers going from a top 12 wide receiver to a top 24 wide receiver this past year. I'm still all in on him coming out of Alabama. Super talented wide receiver, number 2 in that class alongside Ja'Marr Chase. While you don't have to pay anywhere near Ja'Marr Chase level price for Waddle, in Dynasty I got him for a back-end first-round pick. I am more than happy to do that for a guy alongside Tua, especially when the other wide receivers on his team are 30 years or older alongside him. Okay with buying him in a rebuild and a win-now team in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Another thing to add, Raheem Mostert got 20 touchdowns for this team last year, so this offense is so high-powered. I don't expect Mostert and Achane to be as efficient with those touchdowns this season. So if those get spread out more to Jaylen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, you could also see a bump there. So full steam ahead with Waddle and Dynasty. The number 2 wide receiver I'm going with today is Jackson Smith-Njigba for the Seattle Seahawks. A lot of the same ideology we use on Waddle is going to apply here for Smith-Njigba. While he did have a disappointing rookie season in fantasy, still a very efficient player for the Seahawks. It was a very consistent rookie year for Njigba, gradually increasing his snap usage from week 1 to the end of the season. That's what you want to see from a rookie wide receiver. Obviously not going to get a full complement of the offense week 1, but as the season developed, he was getting more involved in this offense. While DK Metcalf obviously is going to garner a lot of attention and targets on the outside, Tyler Lockett is 32 years old by the end of this season. While Lockett, his numbers did decline this past year, still okay numbers in fantasy. I think he's due to be pushed aside for Smith-Njigba, who does a lot of his work out of the slot. Such a talented slot receiver. He was actually the number 1 drafted receiver in his class in 2023. So let's not forget, he's a first-round pick just a year ago. If we can get managers hesitant on his long-term outlook based off of the rookie seasons we've seen from other wide receivers recently, like a Ja'Marr Chase, Justin Jefferson, even Puka Nacua last year, guys that want that level of production from a wide receiver in rookie year, pretty absurd that the standards that we were keeping these rookie wide receivers at based off of these outliers the past couple of seasons. But I am not hesitant to trade for Smith-Njigba, getting him at a discount from where you were getting him last year in drafts at the top, near the top of rookie drafts in 2023. Not only will we see him phase Tyler Lockett out of this offense at 32 years old, his efficiency numbers weren't that bad last year. He was 21st in yards after the catch, which has become one of the best predictive measures for fantasy production recently. We're talking about guys like Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel, all guys who dominate yards after the catch. This is the new age of the wide receiver where you need guys, not only can they catch the ball, they need to be able to run with it after, and Smith-Njigba definitely has that in his game, dating back to Ohio State when we saw him. Not only does he have the yak ability, also number 6 in separation last year, so he's shown the ability to get open for Seattle. They just need to get him the ball, and I think an uptick in snaps and routes, second year in the NFL, that's going to do wonders for Smith-Njigba. I am excited for him coming into year 2 alongside DK Metcalf. Next guy on my list is Rashee Rice for the Kansas City Chiefs. A little controversial given the offseason that he's had right after that Super Bowl win for Kansas City. But the fact that Rashee Rice isn't being valued as a top commodity at the wide receiver position in Dynasty Fantasy Football blows my mind. It doesn't appear like he's going to face any sort of long-winded suspension from the NFL. We're talking about a rookie wide receiver who won fantasy leagues that is attached to the best quarterback in the NFL, Patrick Mahomes. Just to give out some of Rice's numbers from the end of last year, over the last 10 games, including the playoffs, this is really when Rice was fully incorporated into this Kansas City offense. He was getting an 80% snap rate, getting 10 targets a game from Patrick Mahomes, which ranked top 12 in target rate in the entire NFL over the last 10 games, while also being number 7 in red zone targets and number 3 in yards after the catch. Another guy who has the ability to take a bubble screen and go 10 yards. We saw it multiple times into the end zone, in the red zone. Kansas City loves using Rice there. Not to mention all the statistics that look to make Rice a top-notch wide receiver in the NFL for a long time. You're looking at Travis Kelce at 35 years old this year, and Xavier Worthy, a speed option for Kansas City that is already injured in offseason work at 165 pounds, hoping he can stay healthy, but it's definitely something to consider with him. And Hollywood Brown, who's on a 1-year contract. So Rice is definitely someone I'm looking to go all in on, especially once all this offseason nonsense gets cleared away. I'm more than happy to get Patrick Mahomes' number 1 option for the foreseeable future. Next guy I want to look at is Christian Kirk, a guy I have been all over the past 2 years coming into the season. He's been undervalued each of the past 2 seasons in Jacksonville. After getting a huge contract, we told everybody he was one of the best sleepers 2 years ago. Worked out great. Last year, another very consistent year for Kirk. Now, it's not the sexiest option in fantasy football. Christian Kirk's not going to win you any leagues, but he's going to get you very consistent numbers in your wide receiver 3 or flex spot, especially in your PPR leagues. After week 1, he averaged 8 targets per game until his injury later in the season. While dealing with an injured Trevor Lawrence, if we get a healthy Trevor Lawrence this year, Christian Kirk could be through the roof, especially with no Calvin Ridley and the guys they bring in Cade Davis and Brian Thomas, a talented wide receiver out of LSU. But these are more deep threats, not necessarily guys that are going to be close to the line of scrimmage in the slot like Christian Kirk does a lot of his damage. So I don't expect that to lean into his workload. While we know Kirk is a deadly wide receiver in the slot, number 7 win rate versus man coverage last year. Very impressive numbers to go along with number 19 yards per route run. One of the most indicative statistics of fantasy success. So Kirk's got everything going for him. A little older in Dynasty, but still 27. He's got a couple years to grow. Still, if he can continue to be Trevor Lawrence's number 1 option, and he's able to make that next step in his development at the quarterback position, I think Kirk is going to be a valuable option. Wide receiver 3, 2, flex option in Dynasty Fantasy Football, in your PPR leagues especially. Last guy on my list, Khalil Shakir for the Buffalo Bills. This one doesn't make much sense to me. He's rated as the number 70 wide receiver on Fantasy Pros and Dynasty. Number 70 for a guy who has the potential to be the number 1 on his team. Yes, Buffalo does draft Keon Coleman and bring in Curtis Samuel. But last year, the last 7 games, Shakir was getting 70% of the snaps in this Buffalo offense. Not only that, he scores in 3 of the last 4 Bills games. For a team that lost nearly 220 vacated targets from last year, missing guys like Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, why not take a stab at Shakir where he's basically free in Dynasty? Like I said, being rated as the number 70 wide receiver. Absurd. I'll take him. If someone's trying to move up in the offseason draft, I will easily float them a late-round pick and get Shakir as a stash and just see what happens with Josh Allen. More than happy to do that at where he's currently being priced. But those are 5 guys I love buying and trading for right now in Dynasty Fantasy Football, where I believe their value is a little undervalued. Let me know what you think of these 5 guys. Who are you trading for in your offseason? Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more fantasy football content. We got all offseason covered heading into the beginning of the 2024 season. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys next week with another episode of the Fantasy Birds.